Normally on this channel I'd be showing you how to install an alarm or a remote start. On this particular vehicle I'll be uninstalling either an alarm or remote start. I haven't really dug into it to find out what's on here, but I'll explain what to look for, what things you need to do to get your car back to original. So this is a 97 Honda CRV and I purchased it, and it's got something on it currently, and we're about to find out what it is. Alright, so here we are. I've already got the knee bolster off, and I'm going to start looking for wires that obviously don't belong or that are not original. And immediately I see this relay. To me, I automatically think this is a starter kill relay, and that could be with an alarm or a remote start. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and find wires like this that don't look like they should belong. Here's another one. And then there's some more here in the kick panel. So I'm going to remove this cover and this switch right here. There's a nut on this side of it that you'll take loose, and then that'll push through. So I'm going to go ahead and go through and cut all the wire ties like this that are holding up wires that are not factory, and then I'll come back and show you what I found. So this is one of my favorite tools. It's a crimp tool, but it's not the cheap crimp tool that's got the crimpers here and the strippers up here. It's just for crimping, and it's also got these cutters on the end. You could use a pair of side cuts for this, but these being my favorite, I just like to use these. I just wanted to show you. You just want to be careful when you're cutting wire ties that you don't also cut wires. Alright, so I've got this kick panel off. Again, the knee bolster's off. So this right here is a telltale sign that this was an alarm. And so now I'm just going to start cutting out the rest of the wire ties. I just wanted you to see what you might run into when you're doing this on your own. It'd be easy for me to go ahead and cut everything down and say, oh, this is everything I found, without you being able to see it. So okay, so this is a shock sensor. It says right here, shock sensor. Alright, so now the main brain is all I've got left to pull down. Alright, so I'll explain to you what I see here. This is for the lock and unlock wires. So you have a relay for the lock, relay for unlock. And then you've got your shock sensor. This is a starter kill relay, and what it does is it interrupts the starter wire. And this will be interesting. It's a good opportunity for me to show you that if this was a remote start or a wire that's cut, how to put it back together. So we'll be going over that here in just a minute. I really think that's it. I'm just going to go ahead and start unhooking. If you can see this right here, that is the ground. And so I'm going to start just unplugging. What they've used here is called a T-Tap, made by 3M. It's a decent product. I used to install remote starts and alarms this way, but I had some issues with them, and I just like the reliability of cutting the wire or stripping back the wire and soldering it and then taping it. I just felt like it was a better connection. It lasted a whole lot longer. The connection would outlast the product. So that's why you'll see me do the things I do when I do the installs. Now here's another thing. This connector is also made by 3M, but it is a far less superior product than the T-Tap. These were, we call them Scotch locks, and I'll show you how each of these work when I take them off. Alright, so I'm going to show you an example of how these two different 3M connectors work. Showed you a little bit in the vehicle what we were looking at. So this one, you take a wire. So if this is your wire that you want to connect to, on this particular piece here you have a through side, so that will fit here, and you can see the wire goes all the way through it, like so. Let's say that this is the wire that we want to attach to it. You will run that in, you'll run that into this hole, then you put this over the wire that you want to attach it to. Then you take a pair of pliers, squeeze, and now there's your connection. I do not recommend this particular connection. It's just not, no connection is as good as soldering, stripping them back and soldering it. So the other connection is this 3M T-Tap. The other one was a 3M Scotch lock. This one, let's say this is the wire in your car. You go ahead and same thing, you use a pair of pliers, crimp it on there, or smash it on there, and then your wire from your remote start or alarm or electronic device will just plug directly into it, and that's that connection. So this connection here is what I used in the past. It's really nice for pulling the remote start and or alarm back off of the vehicle if it's a leased vehicle, or you know the customer switches cars often, then it's real easy to remove, and then in their new car you install these T-taps and it's a lot easier to reattach. But I just have to go back to the best connection is the strip back, wrap, and solder the wire, heat shrink where possible. And anyway, that's the different connectors. Also, you can see which one is the bulkier. The Scotch lock is the bulkier of the two. This one makes it nice where you can run all your wires together and it turns into a T. But anyway, I just wanted to show you examples of those connections and how they're made, and maybe you can better understand why they were used, where they were used. Alright, so if you have a starter kill relay installed on your vehicle, this will prevent the car from starting because we're cutting the starter wire right here and putting this relay in line. So when the alarm is armed, it activates this relay, which essentially cuts this wire, and the starter does not work. So what we want to do is we want to get rid of this relay. We'll have to add a piece of wire between the two to bring it back together. So what I'm going to go ahead and do, I'm going to cut it and leave it long. This orange wire is the activation wire for the starter kill relay, which you don't really care about if all you're trying to do is get this torn out. So I'm going to go ahead and cut it. Start pulling these wires back. All right. And really, there's not a whole lot left to pulling this off. I'm going to go ahead and cut, well, might not need to, yeah. So this is for the LED light that's mounted up on the steering column. But I'm gonna leave the light so I don't have a hole. I'm gonna go ahead and cut that and get this wire out of the way. So now I'm gonna go ahead and unplug the rest of these wires. It's gonna be a door trigger. You're gonna have lock, unlock, door trigger. So on these Hondas, these are different tabs that you can just plug your wires into. This is a constant, this is your parking lights. So this car is actually pretty easy to pull stuff off of, at least the way they did the install. So I'm going to come back through and I'm going to take these connectors off, and then that way they'll be pretty clean and pretty minimal as far as the repair. I'm just going to put electrical tape over the exposed area, which these connectors don't leave much of an exposed area. And for the moment, I'm also going to cut the ground wire to the alarm. Okay, so now we are free with the exception of this antenna wire. I don't know if you can see that. And I followed it up and I felt like it was tied. So let's see what's going on there. Yeah, I can feel the end of it. On these older units, they use this wire as the antenna, and the higher you got it, and the closer to the center, the further away the alarm worked. And so this is the fun part. Take this. The things I need to address now that it is off here and uninstalled is the starter wire and these connectors here. When I get one off, I'll show you what's left behind. Now let's look at the wire and see if you can see the damage left behind. So it's this wire here, the blue with the black stripe. And you can just tell that it barely pierces the insulation. So it's not major, but I still will wrap that with black tape, as well as these here. Alright, here is my favorite electrical tape. It's Scotch Super 33 Plus. I also have another tape that I like. It's Tessa Tape, and it's a cloth-like material, and it's something I'm pretty sure that OEM manufacturers use in a lot of wire harnesses, and it gives a factory appearance when it's done properly. And later on this vehicle, not in this video but in a future video, I will be installing a remote start alarm, and you'll see the finished product with that, with the Tessa Tape. Now, that being said, when I do this repair, it is going to be temporary, and the reason is because I will be installing a remote start alarm at a later time, and most likely the starter kill will need to be re-implemented. So one thing I like to do, just so you know what I'm going to do, is I'm going to strip back some of this wire, and I'm going to cut this right at the edge of this metal piece on the inside where you crimp it, just so I can keep the wire as long as possible. So you can see it's right at the edge there. So I'm going to go ahead and strip this back, and you only need to get about 1/4 of an inch, maybe 3/8 of an inch. And then I've got my butt connector. Just going to slide it up on there. Go ahead and crimp it. Same with this side. Put that in there. Alright, so what we did there is we put the wire back to original. You know, there's obviously not a relay in between here. And when I do this for myself, this will be a soldered connection. We'll get away from the butt connectors. So onto these wires where those T-taps were, I'll show you. It's real super simple. So we're just going to take the tape and get about 1/2 of an inch, and then that's what we got. We're just going to wrap that around this area here where the T-tap had pierced the insulation. So I think I'm actually going to turn this sideways. Say, for example, on this, if they would have soldered these wires, all we would do is we would cut the aftermarket wire as close to this wire as possible, and then still do the same thing, still wrap it with the electrical tape. It's about all you can do. Okay, so at this point we have removed the aftermarket alarm, we've removed the wire connectors, and we have re-insulated pretty much the best you can. We've re-insulated the wires where those connectors were attached, and then we have reconnected the starter wire. So at this point, this is all I'm going to do. Alright, and that's all there is to taking out an alarm and or remote start. Basically, anywhere you disconnect a wire, if it was a plug-in style like what I had, you just will wrap the wire after you take the connector off, or you will cut the wire. If it's soldered together, you'll cut the wires close to the wire and then wrap it with the electrical tape, and that's really about as good as it's going to get, unless you were to replace, you know, complete harnesses, which is not necessary. But hopefully you'll join me for the installation of the remote start alarm on this vehicle. And we'll see you next time. If you have any questions, put them in the comments below and I'd be happy to help you out. Thanks for watching.